all dead and 3 countries now grounding this brand new state-of-the-art Boeing jet. Hope you had a good weekend. We begin a brand new week now. I'm Bill Hemmer live here in New York City. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Bill. Good morning, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith. The crash marking the second disaster in less than 5 months involving the Boeing 737 MAX 8 plane. We're now hearing both the black box and cockpit recorder have been found.
Here is a statement from our government. The U.S. Department of State extends our deepest condolences to the families and friends of those killed in the tragic crash of Ethiopian Airlines flight ET-302. Our teams in Addis Ababa, Nairobi, and Washington, D.C. are working tirelessly to provide all appropriate consular assistance to families of the victims at this difficult time. Trey Yinks begins our coverage from the Middle East in Jerusalem with more from there now. Trey.
Bill, the black box from that Boeing 737 has been recovered from the crash yesterday in Ethiopia as investigators search for answers as to what led to this deadly tragedy. Ethiopian Airlines also saying that the cockpit voice recorder has been recovered. The flight ET-302 crashed yesterday morning just 6 minutes after takeoff outside of Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. All 157 people on board were killed when the plane plummeted into an open field and exploded upon impact. The CEO of Ethiopian Airlines released new information today saying that this pilot had more than 8,000 hours of flight experience. After takeoff, the pilot also reportedly phoned back to air traffic control in Addis Ababa asking to turn
that decision.
Well, that's right, Bill. As condolences pour in to the families of those victims lost in the crash yesterday, a number of countries around the world are grounding this Boeing 737 MAX 8 plane until more information can be found out about what caused this crash, and also those planes can be properly inspected and cleared for flying. China, Indonesia, and also the Cayman Islands working to try to figure out what exactly went wrong here before they put those planes back up in the air. Additionally, we heard from the Ethiopian regional airline manager about Ethiopia's decision to ground some of these planes. Take a listen.
We have grounded all Boeing B737-8 MAX fleet, which Ethiopian Airlines was operating and which was involved in yesterday's accident, as a precaution safety measure.
The biggest airline in the United States, American Airlines, says they have confidence in their fleet of Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes, and they will not be grounding any of those planes at this time. Bill?
Thank you, Trey. Trey Yinks beginning our coverage there from the Middle East. 3 past.
Another big story we're watching at this hour. President Trump gearing up for another border wall fight as his new 2020 budget is set to be unveiled just hours from now. Here is some of what we know is in it. An increase in defense spending, a 5% cut in domestic spending, and this, $8.6 billion for the border wall. The White House making it clear that border security will continue to be a top priority.
The whole issue of the wall and border security is of paramount importance. We have a crisis down there. I think the president has made that case very effectively. We have to be much tougher and have more constructive immigration policy, which we will be developing over a period of time. So, yes, he's going to stay with his wall, and he's going to stay with the border security theme. I think it's essential.
Kevin Corke is following all this for us live from the White House on this Monday morning. Kevin, good morning to you. So how much of this wish list does the White House believe will actually make it over the finish line?
Okay, let's be candid. Not much, but the idea here, Sandra, is to engage Democrats on some of the top priorities and maybe in the hope of finding a bit of common ground. Certainly for us, it's a chance to understand what the administration's priorities are. Let me just share just a bit of the bullet points, some of the ideas behind the budget for 2020. The administration wants to curb spending. They obviously want to strengthen border security, but I talked about finding common ground. Here are some possibilities. National defense, combating the opioid epidemic, investing in education and America's students, modernizing government, and obviously caring for our veterans. But the big headline today will clearly be the border wall. The president looking for $8.6 billion to fund it, $5 billion from DHS, $3.6 billion from defense and military construction budget to complete 722 miles of border barrier. But he's also looking to invest more than $80 billion into veterans health care and $2.7 trillion in spending cuts over a decade. That would be higher than any other administration in history. So you could say trimming a bit of the fat in some areas to build up those in need of a boost.
We believe the 3% growth rate of 2018 will continue in 2019 and beyond 2020 and so forth. I think the other element is always to limit spending, and the president is proposing roughly a 5% across-the-board reduction in domestic spending accounts. It will be a tough budget. We're going to do our own caps this year, and I think it's long overdue. Some of these recent budget deals have not been favorable towards spending. So I think it's exactly the right prescription.
The right prescription, and not a new or novel idea, this idea of cutting government in order to make it more lean and more efficient. We'll see what happens in the budget, Sandra.
Kevin, so how different are these priorities that the White House is laying out different from previous budget requests?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question, and I think the honest answer is not terribly, no, but there's a bit of nuance here, and I think it's important because the idea is to engage Congress, right? Now, this budget will force lawmakers to support some ideas that otherwise they maybe would prefer to bypass, because there's real pressure here to give a little to get a little. That's the give and take here inside the Beltway. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, Sandra, we should expect any deal on the wall anytime soon. Here's a Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi statement. It reads in part, at a time when our country faces challenges about jobs for the future, this money, talking about wall funding, would be better spent on rebuilding America and on education and workforce development for jobs for the 21st century. Just got this nugget, by the way, from my colleague John Roberts. Pretty controversial part of the budget calls for welfare reform work requirements, 20 hours a week for those on Medicaid and public housing and in receiving food stamps. Interesting. 11:30, we'll find out more, but for now, back to you.
That's a short time away from now. Kevin Corke, thank you.
Also today, more fallout from the ongoing Michael Cohen saga. House Democratic freshman Katie Hill saying that she expects Cohen to be referred to the Justice Department for perjury.
Did Michael Cohen lie to your committee, and do you support referring Cohen to the Justice Department for committing perjury?
So I don't know if he lied or not. I imagine that that Chairman Cummings will end up referring him. That's just my guess. When Chairman Cummings says something like "I'm going to nail you to the cross," he means it.
Well, how about that? Former Congressman and Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Jason, good morning to you. What do you make of her commentary about perjury and to be referred? Do you think that happens?
I do think it happens because I think there's a half dozen or so issues where Mr. Cohen lied, obviously, under oath. I think Mr. Cummings will live up to his word. I think Congressman, the Chairman, Jordan and Mark Meadows make a good point, particularly on the idea of whether or not Mr. Cohen asked and wanted some sort of pardon. That is black and white, even contradicted by his own attorney. So I do think Mr. Cummings will live up to his word, and that will be referred. Adam
Schiff was talking again over the weekend. I'm sure you heard this. He says Mueller should get the president under oath. Just listen right here.
I think it is a mistake. When you get written answers from a witness, it's really the lawyer's answers as much as the client's answer. And here you need to be able to ask follow-up questions in real time.
He wants him to testify before Mueller. What's the chance that happens, Jason?
Well, it's offensive. First of all, Mr. Schiff comes with absolutely zero credibility on this. To suggest that the president's submission was the attorney's submission and not the president's is offensive on itself. Mr. Schiff knows nothing about what's happening in this, and Mr. Schiff over the last several weeks has spent time trying to discredit Mueller, saying, well, whatever Mueller finds, we're going to continue to do our own thing because obviously that's not going to be enough. So he talks a lot. He doesn't produce a lot. He says it makes promises that end up never being true.
Well, it appears, at least on the House Democratic side, it's a never-ending quest there. And speaking of quests, you have a brand new piece at foxnews.com where you talk about the tax returns of the president. Here's part of what you write. The crown jewels for Democrats in their insatiable quest to overturn the results of the 2016 president election are Donald Trump's tax returns. They're assuming there is something in there, I would take from that. What's your take?
Yeah, they've been talking about this before Donald Trump was even elected as president. You are not required by law to release this. They want to see it. They're convinced that he has committed some sort of crime or done something wrong. It is optional for a president to release these, but they are demanding this. Now, it's called 6103 information. When you're on Capitol Hill, You can't just go and get somebody's tax returns. Congresses of past have understood that these would be weaponized for political purposes. So very few people can get their hands on there, but look for in the next 10 days, the Democrats actually bring something up on the floor to force this issue and try to get these returns.
But how would you get tax returns if they're so protected by law? How do you make that happen?
Well, again, I think the Secretary of Treasury will probably block what the Democrats are going to try to do. But there's only 4 people elected by the people that can access these returns: the president, the chairman of Senate Finance, the chairman of Ways and Means, and the chairman of the Joint Committee on Taxation. You can only look at them in closed session. You can't just go grab somebody's tax returns and release them. Imagine if Donald Trump was trying to do that on, say, Chairman Nadler. We would scream bloody murder, and rightfully so. But what they're going to try to do is get these tax returns because, again, Democrats have promised that the president has done something wrong. They just haven't been able to find any evidence. They think it's in the president's tax returns.
Let's see ultimately that happens. Thank you, Jason. Jason Chaffetz on a Monday morning with us there. Thank you, sir. We'll talk again soon. 11 past. Sandra.
We're going to have more on this probe later in our hour with our headliner, former Trump campaign advisor Michael Capito, receiving one of those 81 documents, a request from the House Judiciary Committee. He joins us at 10:30 Eastern Time. And, Bill, he's really going to come on with us and tell us how he plans to handle all of that. He's already put out his response.
Yeah, he's pretty strong, too. I mean, he says his family's been driven deep into debt to the tune of millions of dollars, so he'll make his case on that. In the meantime, we're waiting on Mueller, right, Sandra? It's a brand new week. I mean, there seems to be a parlor game between Washington, D.C. and the media as to when that happens. So when it does, you'll get it here first. Fox News alert. U.S.-backed Syrian forces now attacking the last ISIS stronghold in that country. Can the U.S. now claim victory there soon? Plus this.
All of these things sound radical compared to where we are, but where we are is not a good thing. And this idea of like 10% better from garbage shouldn't be what we settle for.
Heard some immediate reaction there. Well, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez getting a big crowd over the weekend as she touted her socialist message. Karl Rove will be here to react.
Also, the latest on this lawsuit from the Covington Catholic high school teenager, the center of that controversy, could next be targeting CNN. That's coming up.
False speech has no value. And in Nicholas Salmon's case, you're talking about false speech that threatened, attacked, and vilified a minor child. We don't need that speech. That's not what the
16 past breaking news overseas is the U.S. about to claim victory over ISIS in Syria. Retired four-star General Jack Keane with me now, chairman for the Institute of the Study of War and a Fox News senior strategic analyst. General, good morning to you. I'm reading they may be down to about 500 fighters there. Is it about time you can stick the flag in this one in eastern Syria, sir?
Well, we can legitimately claim victory over destroying the caliphate and taking the territory away from ISIS. After all, it was quite historic for an organization of...
...into General. In the meantime, you've got another situation on the other side of the world, and that is North Korea. Apparently, some missile activity has been detected yet again. Here's John Bolton with Maria on Sunday describing that.
I don't think we can really judge from what we can see, and you're describing commercial satellite imagery. It's been in the press. We have a lot of other ways of learning what they're doing as well. I think it's important to get all the evidence before we make a decision. The president's obviously said he would be very disappointed if that's the direction North Korea were going in.
What do you think the truth is, sir?
Well, I don't think we know. I mean, I do know this. I think the North Koreans made a blunder at the Hanoi summit. And why is that? Well, because they should have known that President Trump is not his predecessors and would not behave the same way his predecessors did if you put the same deal on the table. And that's essentially what the North Koreans did. They put that deal on the table. They expected President Trump to ease up on sanctions, and he said no deal. So what is happening now, is that part of face-saving that's going on with the North Koreans? Yeah, I think that's part of it, to be sure. Or is it a major policy shift to return to past hostilities and to past crisis? I don't think we have the answer to that. And what I suspect is North Korea, Bill, still wants to continue with negotiations. It's in their national interest to get those sanctions at some point removed. But now they know they're going to have to put something more on the table than what they've done in the past if that's going to happen.
I think you're exactly right.
That's the direction
we're
moving in.
I think Hanoi taught us three things, and he wants to run the table in all things, and that is remove part of the sanctions, if not all of them, maintain his grip on power, and keep a level of his nuclear arsenal. And he now wants to go 3 for 3. Can he do it?
I don't think so. First of all, we are not challenging his grip on power. That's a policy shift from this administration. We're not talking regime change. As a matter of fact, we want to put things in place that would give him some guarantee of his security so he doesn't have to have nuclear weapons. And that's a step in the right direction. We still don't know if Kim Jong-un is going to denuclearize, and we just got to admit that to ourselves. And time is going to tell us whether he's really serious about this or not. He'll give us some facilities, but would he give us his arsenal of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons? Big question mark, yet to be answered. What we have to do is what this administration is doing, is keep the sanctions on and actually reinforce those sanctions, because Russia and China are in violation of the UN resolution on those sanctions, Bill, and we should expose it. Let's get tougher on that.
Thank you, General. It's good to see you on a Monday. Every day, in fact. Jack Keane in Washington. Thank you, sir.
Good talking to you, Bill.
More destruction down south as tornadoes touch down again. How survivors are dealing with the aftermath today.
Also, have you seen this horrifying video of a jaguar attacking a woman at a zoo in Arizona? How she got so close to the animal in a moment.
So we have this lady, she got dogged by one of our jaguars. Her arm is like a pretty bad shape. She looks pale. She's in like pain, like really bad pain.
Oh, I'll bet.
All right, quick look at markets here. 1 minute into trading, and it is a down day on Wall Street, at least in the first few moments here. The Dow opening down 229 points, especially after news over the weekend of that Ethiopian plane crash involving a Boeing jet. 3 countries now grounding that particular new model of an airplane. Boeing is already down 13% in early trading, and that is accounting for almost all of that loss that you're seeing on the Dow right now. Also, we are listening to Larry Kudlow, the White House economic advisor, and what he is saying is happening on trade with China. On Fox News Sunday over the weekend, he sounded optimistic about a deal getting done. Listen.
I don't want to predict. It's up to the president, not to me. But I think the headway has been good.
Simple question. Will there be a signing ceremony between the two leaders either in March or April?
I will play that from the optimistic side. I will take the over on that, just as with economic growth.
Over meaning?
Over meaning good, yes.
Okay.
Positive.
Sometime
bullish.
Either this month or next.
Bullish.
It sounds like he's making a forecast that this is going to get done, and the markets had so much uncertainty built into it, though, right, Bill, over whether or not this is going to happen, and so a lot of the losses that we're seeing right now are due to Boeing.
As long as I've known Kudlow, he's been a bull, right? I mean, he emphasized twice in that answer, I'm bullish.
Yep.
I'm bullish. But we've seen a trend down. There's some weakening overseas and a lot of other governments and countries, and it's having a drag on us right now. But right now, we're the tallest tree in the forest. That's what we are. All right, 9:32 now on a Monday. Check it out.
I certainly don't believe that the media needs breathing room under the First Amendment to rush out and adopt a social media mob attack on a 16-year-old child. The First Amendment does not require that to be a viable, effective protection to our citizens.
That is Lynn Wood, the attorney out of Atlanta, the lawyer for the Covington Catholic High School student by the name of Nick Sandmann. His legal team now planning to sue CNN for $250 million. Lynn Wood calls vicious attacks in its reporting of the incident, and therefore it must. The latest in Washington, and why is Sandmann going after CNN now? Garrett, let's start there.
Well, Bill, CNN is just one of more than 50 media outlets and individuals that Sandmann's legal team has warned about a possible lawsuit. Sandmann's attorney argues that the network was more vicious in its direct attacks on the high school junior than the Washington Post, and severely damaged Sandmann's reputation by broadcasting false claims into millions of homes. You'll remember this viral video of the January incident led to headlines suggesting that Covington Catholic High School students, several wearing Make America Great Again hats, were taunting and harassing a Native American man on the National Mall. Full video of the encounter later showed that it was the Native American man who approached the students and got in Nick Salmon's face. Last night, Salmon's attorney Lynn Wood said those initial reports attacking the students were part of the media's war against the president.
Now, you've seen the tape. If you took the time to look at the full context of what happened that day, Nicholas Salmon did absolutely nothing wrong. But you have a situation where CNN couldn't resist the idea that here's a guy with a young boy with a Make America Great Again cap on. So they go after him.
And Wood also said the lawsuit will be filed either today or tomorrow and will likely seek damages greater than the $250 million lawsuit against the Post.
So what are you hearing from CNN? What are they saying about the lawsuit, Garrett?
Well, Fox News has reached out to CNN for comment but has not heard back. As for the Washington Post, earlier this month, the paper published an editor's note admitting mistakes in its coverage of the incident, saying in part, subsequent reporting, a student's statement, and additional video allow for a more complete assessment of what occurred, either contradicting or failing to confirm accounts provided in that story. Now, Salmon's attorneys said that explanation a month and a half after the incident was too little, too late. Bill?
Garrett Tenney on that today. Thank you, sir, out of Washington.
Top Republicans still slamming Democrats for the anti-hate resolution that passed in the House last week. Congresswoman Liz Cheney says it's watered down and fails to single out Congresswoman Omar.
I decided to vote against it because I think it was really clearly an effort to actually protect Ilhan Omar, to cover up her bigotry and anti-Semitism by refusing to name her. The Democrats have yet to take any action to remove her from her committee. And they've got a real problem. I mean, the extent to which they are now abiding by anti-Semitism, enabling anti-Semitism in their party, is something we watch them struggle with, but something that's very dangerous for the country.
Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs sits on the House Judiciary Committee. He also voted against the resolution. Congressman, good morning. Why did you vote against that resolution last week?
Well, I voted against it because I felt that it buried what we were actually there for. We were there for an anti-Semitic problem on the Democrat side with Ilhan Omar. And they turned it into a world peace resolution, something that meant little. We all know that we shouldn't hate people. But it was also in conjunction with everything from Nancy Pelosi saying, oh, she didn't understand her words. Steny Hoyer saying we have problems on both sides, so he's trying to deflect. You got Clyburn saying, look, it's more personal to her than even children of Holocaust victims. And Tlaib saying, oh, she's just commenting on Israel. None of that is true. Because the real problem is with Ilhan Omar's series of anti-Semitic rhetoric, and that's why I looked at it and I said, yeah, we don't want to hate people, but good grief, we need to call out a problem that we have and deal with it, and they weren't dealing with the problem.
You just heard Congresswoman Cheney making the case that House Democrats are enabling anti-Semitism. She also made the case that they are protecting Congresswoman Omar. Do you agree with all that?
I absolutely do. They're certainly protecting Omar, and they're trying to justify everything that she has said, or if they can't justify it, which they can't, then they try to deflect it. And if they can't deflect it, then they try to bury it. And I think that does exactly what Liz said. It allows her to continue with her anti-Semitic comments, and that's tragic.
You know, and not all are trying to do that. Katie Hill, we've had her on this program. She's a Democrat from California, Purple District. She is acknowledging that her party needs to do better at avoiding these distractions. She said, quote, we have elected a lot of strong-willed and very opinionated people. So I think what we have to figure out somehow is to say, okay, this isn't the views of everybody in Congress. I thought that was interesting, Congresswoman, because what does this say, what we have seen so far? What does it say about leadership when it comes to the Democratic Party in the House?
Well, you know, I like Katie, but you notice she didn't come out and condemn anti-Semitism. She said we have a problem. This isn't everybody's view. She needs to condemn it. So there's a leadership problem from the rank and file. I mean, Ted Deutsch did much better at doing that, but it shows that there is a conflict at the top of this Democrat Party that is being actually held hostage in many respects, in my opinion, by the young people that just came in that Katie Hill's talking about.
Meanwhile, we are waiting the White House to unveil the new budget. What we know so far is what Fox News has received per our own sources is that it will include this $8.6 billion total for the border wall, $5 billion from DHS, $3.6 billion from defense and military construction, completes 722 miles of the border barrier. What does this tell you about the priorities of the White House, Congressman?
Well, I think the president has made the case that it's an emergency on the border, and I think they want to build a wall and extend it. What we're doing with his emergency declaration doesn't get the job done. I mean, the reports out, Arizona last year, in the last couple of years, enough fentanyl seized to kill between 70 and 80 million Americans in Arizona alone from the border. And that's, when you look at that, that's an emergency. That's an emergency.
Leaders of the Democratic Party have responded already. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have put out a statement ahead of the official release of that budget this morning. President Trump hurt millions of Americans and caused widespread chaos when he recklessly shut down the government to try to get his expensive and ineffective wall, which he promised would be paid for by Mexico. We hope he learned his lesson. Obviously, this sets up for another battle royale. Do we risk another government shutdown, Congressman?
Well, it's a little early to say. I think it telegraphs something that I think we all knew, is that the Democrats are going to keep fighting this tooth and nail. They don't want a border wall. They don't want border security. They give lip service to it. And we really could have resolved this last time if the Senate could have voted for the budget that came out of the House. So a lot of blame to go around for the last shutdown, that's for sure. And I'm hoping we don't have another shutdown, but it sounds like the Democrats are in for a fight on the border.
Sounds like that blame is already getting thrown around. Congressman Biggs, yes. Appreciate your time this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Sandra.
So the last living daughter of the baseball legend Babe Ruth has passed away. Julia Ruth Stevens was 102. She passed away after a short illness at a Las Vegas nursing home on Saturday. She was adopted by Ruth after he married her mother in 1929. Julia became a Babe Ruth ambassador, representing her father's legacy at events nationwide. That is a big piece.
Great pictures there, too.
American sports history right there. Wow. Big
All
life.
right. Story now, a woman who was attacked by a jaguar apologizing to an Arizona zoo this morning. That's because she hopped a barrier to get closer to the animals so that she could take a selfie. William Lajeunesse joins us from our West Coast Bureau this morning. This did not end well. William?
Well, there are actually two barriers, Sandra, separating the cats from visitors to the zoo. So this young woman jumps over to grab a selfie with the female jaguar when it reaches out through the steel fence, using one paw to grab her sweater and the other to grab her arm.
The claws that were retracted were definitely outside of the cage and grasped around her hand, and she was holding it, her other arm with her hand attached to the paw, just screaming to get out.
So another visitor shoves a water bottle through the fence, distracting the cat. Her son then grabs the victim and pulls her away from the jaguar.
But her other paw was stuck on the lady's shirt.
And a few other guests that were there pulled her away.
So a sign tells visitors do not cross the barrier. And after getting stitched up, the victim came back to the Wildlife World Zoo outside Phoenix and apologized, saying it was her fault.
So we know, William, this is the second incident. Was this the same animal, same park?
Exactly. 10 months ago, a man reached over the barrier to take some video, and the cat reached out through the fence, clawed his finger. He got 8 stitches, the man, not the cat, and called a lawyer but never sued. All at issue is that 3-foot-tall concrete barrier and 3-foot setback with some bushes enough to keep visitors safe, even those who don't follow the rule. A park spokeswoman said the exhibit meets federal standards and the jaguar will not be euthanized.
We are taking in consideration all aspects of safety pertaining to this exhibit as well as throughout the entire park, because that is our biggest concern.
So the park is about a half hour outside Phoenix. They have 600 species, including 2 jaguars endangered in North America. Sandra, back to you.
Some stories there. William Lajeunesse, thank you.
Yes, wow. White House making it clear that border security will be a top priority in the president's budget proposal.
We have a crisis down there. I think the president has made that case very effectively. It's a crisis of economics. It's a crisis of crime and drugs. It's a crisis of humanity.
2 hours officially, the budget goes public. $8.6 billion expected to fund the border wall. We'll have a look at what else is inside of that coming up. Plus, there is this.
As a nation, we must at all times stand up to it. And the kind of anti-Semitism that you're seeing now from Ilhan Omar and that has been supported by her colleagues is a kind of anti-Semitism that really has the ability to creep in and become normalized.
Top Republicans still calling out Democrats for that anti-hate resolution on which they voted last week, accusing them of trying to protect Congresswoman Omar. Congressman Andy Biggs voted against it. He will be here to explain why he made that decision.
Also, the lawyer for the Covington Catholic high school student in the center of the media's rush to judgment now has a new target. We'll tell you who that is coming up next.
Well, there are actually two barriers, Sandra, separating the cats from visitors to the zoo. So this young woman jumps over a 3-foot-high concrete wall to grab a selfie with the female jaguar when it reaches out through the steel fence, using one paw to grab her sweater and the other to grab her arm.
The claws that were retracted were definitely outside of the cage and grasped around her hand, and she was holding it, her other arm with her hand attached to the paw, just screaming.
Water bottle through the fence, distracting the cat. Her son then grabs the victim and pulls her away from the jaguar.
She took one paw off, grabbed the bottle with the mouth, but her other paw was stuck on the lady's shirt.
And a few other guests that were there pulled her away.
So a sign tells visitors do not cross the barrier. And after getting stitched up, the victim came back to the Wildlife World Zoo outside Phoenix and apologized, saying it was her fault.
So
Sandra?
we know, William, this is the second incident. Was this the same animal, same park?
Exactly. 10 months ago, a man reached over the barrier to take some video, and the cat reached out through the fence, clawed his finger. He got 8 stitches, the man, not the cat, and called a lawyer but never sued. All at issue is that 3-foot-tall concrete barrier and 3-foot setback with some bushes enough to keep visitors safe, even those who don't follow the rule. A park spokeswoman said the exhibit meets federal standards and the jaguar will not be euthanized.
We are taking in consideration all aspects of safety pertaining to this exhibit as well as throughout the entire park, because that is our biggest concern.
So the park is about a half hour outside Phoenix. They have 600 species, including 2 jaguars endangered in North America. Sandra, back to you.
Some stories there. William Lajeunesse, thank you.
Yes, wow. White House making it clear that border security will be a top priority in the president's budget proposal.
We have a crisis down there. I think the president has made that case very effectively. It's a crisis of economics. It's a crisis of crime and drugs. It's a crisis of humanity.
2 hours officially, the budget goes public. $8.6 billion expected to fund the border wall. We'll have a look at what else is inside of that coming up. Plus, there is this.
As a nation, we must at all times stand up to it. And the kind of anti-Semitism that you're seeing now from Ilhan Omar and that has been supported by her colleagues is a kind of anti-Semitism that really has the ability to creep in and become normalized.
Top Republicans still calling out Democrats for that anti-hate resolution on which they voted last week, accusing them of trying to protect Congresswoman Omar. Congressman Andy Biggs voted against it. He will be here to explain why he made that decision.
Also, the lawyer for the